Yeah, I see a webinar streaming on Facebook. Awesome.
Yeah. It's setting us up. Okay, so we are live. Okay, guys, well, welcome to another night of just amazing interviews. And tonight I have someone very, very, very special to me. He is a mentor. He's a leader in the space of education. Benjamin Powers, welcome. And for those of you guys turning on here, please just share where you're watching from. We have a huge community all over the world of parents, educators, and kids alike, all coming together to just learn about the future of our kids and how to better reach them. So please share where you're watching from. And without further ado, Ben Powers, headmaster of the Southport School, who I'm an alumni of, very dear to my heart. And I'm really excited to be talking about this. So Ben, welcome.
Hey, well, Jake, first of all, thanks for having me. And, this is really special for me too, Jake. You and I have talked about this in the past. I appreciate the fact that, your experience at the Southport School and the relationship we've built and the ability from your perspective to mentor you. But as I shared, it's a symbiotic relationship. You have certainly mentored me in this journey as well. And it's an honor, and I'm grateful to be on with you tonight.
Awesome, great. So cool. So I guess what we'll do is we'll just start by, Ben, what you're doing over there is just, it's so great. And I know that COVID-19 has caused such, we've not predicted this in our plans for the year, this year in the fall. And I know that there's a lot of parents on here that are curious, just what's going on? What should we expect? And most importantly, how can you just share a little bit about what you do at the school and just some of your background?
Yeah, no, of course, Jake. And you're right. Nobody expected this when we opened school in the fall. But here's the beauty, and this firsthand. Here's the beauty of living and working with people with language-based learning disabilities or learning differences like dyslexia and ADHD. We might not have considered this that it was going to happen, but boy, do we know how to navigate challenging circumstances, and we rely on our resiliency as a protective factor to carry us through some of these things. So we've really taken this at the Southport School and through our work in the collab, and we can talk about that in a little bit. We've taken this as an opportunity to say, look, yes, what's happening in this moment is a response to something that we actually knew quite a bit about over a number of years, that this was a possibility, but that really nobody planned for, and of course it's wreaked havoc on all parts of the world and numerous people's lives. But in the space of education, I actually think, and the way we're thinking about this at the Southport School is this is actually a positive disruption, because and we've talked about this, Jake, the model of the classroom with 25 kids lined up straight in desks, doing things the way that we've done with kids for over 100 years. That's not preparing them for what's down the road. And one of the huge things we see as adults in this circumstance, and we've been communicating pretty regularly through this. You've been successful, you've been running your job, right? You've been transitioning. As adults, right, we can do that, not because we're more malleable or flexible than the kids. It's because we're given the autonomy to figure out how to balance work, right? How to leverage resources, how to leverage tools. And those are all things that are innately part of our program. If you're working with LD, ADHD kids, you better have bucketfuls of that, that in your arsenal. But, when you think about an opportunity to say, we were already doing things differently from most schools, and now's an opportunity to shine a much brighter light on, not that what we're going through right now is, in terms of, not being connected physically to students, that's not to suggest that's the right path. But what is a huge opportunity is to say, okay, what do we learn from this to leverage, even better what we can with these kids?
Right. And I think that this is such a unique time. And I say this all the time to parents that I'm working with. And, I'm seeing this too, that this is a chance for parents to bond with our kids in ways like never
Yeah.
before. But I mean, do you think that this is COVID-19 has sparked a revolution in education? Could this never be the same ever again with the model classroom? I mean, do you think, is there conversation among schools that's saying, maybe we do need to change our ways a little bit?
Well, I think, unfortunately, in a lot of, it's the same in a lot of ecosystems in the workplace. A lot of what happens is top down. And so,
Right.
and of course you need order, you need structure. And so that's super helpful. The challenge with that model is, by the time what gets from the top down, it, it's like telephone. It either doesn't get executed the right way, or it's not the same thing that you started with. And I think what's interesting is a lot of people have had conversations about, okay, we need to change the landscape. We know schools look different. And we've seen some really bold, ambitious projects like, Microsoft built like the school of the future and all these great things.
Right.
But it's been a very top-down approach. It's been people who have said, okay, here's what we want to do, or here's what we think it should look like. Well, one of the most incredible aspects of what's happened in the last 2 months, and we're finishing up here in the next month, who's giving us the most amount of feedback, who has the most amount of experience and knowledge in this space? Not the administrators, but the teachers and the students, right? So,
Right.
so the reason I think that's important is there's still a need for, ecosystem structure, but I think it's opening a wide door to a lot more feedback and observation into, how do kids learn, what's working with them, and you just said it, like the parents at home. One huge benefit we're seeing from this that we didn't expect, and of course, it doesn't undo the huge weight or the inequity. I mean, there are numerous kids at home who don't have a caregiver or a parent available to them. And I do want to talk about that too, Jake, because there's a huge downside to what's happening too, right now for vulnerable communities. But, when you think about parents who are there with their kids, or,
Right.
they're able to see who their kid is as a learner much more clearly, and maybe develop a little bit of a different type of relationship than would have existed just a year ago.
Right. And I think that is something that's so important. I mean, transition, we're in transition right now. Transition for our kids leaving, our eighth graders that are graduating,
Yep.
our 12th graders that are graduating, even just if you're not an eighth or 12th grader, you're just going to the next grade.
That's right.
But this is 2020. I think, I always say, Ben, there's always a theme for each year. And this year's theme is transition.
Yeah, that's a good way to think
Everyone
about it.
is in a space of transition. And hint, I'm going to talk about this during our commencement speech on Tuesday. I'm speaking at the Southport School's graduation. I'm very excited. For those of you that don't know, the Southport School is in Southport, Connecticut. And they're just doing such great things over there. But I want to just say, to your point, is there's just a lot that we can take away from this. And for the parents watching this, that's saying, maybe next year, I know public school is really challenging for my kids, and they're not in a good place. I'm exploring different options. But what do you think that we can say to parents? And for those of you guys watching, please, if you have questions, this is an amazing opportunity to ask to an industry leader like Ben. We can talk about it. There's a 15-second delay, so we may be a little bit delayed in our response, but we will get to you. But yeah, like what are some tips for our parents, like thinking about the fall? And it is such an unknown, there's some schools in Connecticut that are starting in October. Yep. So it's tricky, especially with our working parents. So
yeah. Well, I'm gonna tell you, I'm gonna answer this in two ways. And I know this is a little selfish of me, Jake, but sure. I'm gonna answer it from a view of the Southport School, and I'm gonna share this viewpoint with you simply because of the person who's helping us with it. So we've got a colleague, a friend of mine, Stephen Fernaris, who's he's a principal at Perkins Eastman, and I think I shared with you, Stephen, super dyslexic. in ninth grade in the same high school I went to, Jake, although we didn't know each other at the time, was told, basically there was no value in his continuing school, no value to consider college. He ended up at the school, and this was before I worked there.
Classic. It's a
Yep,
classic.
right.
It's a classic,
So classic
Right.
story, right? So and you're in familiar waters here. Again, he had the resources, the access to it, and the parents. His parents found a school just like the Southport School. It was a school that I actually used to work at. And although I wasn't there when Stephen was there, he went, spent 2 years, had an incredible transition. And then he went to the Marvelwood School, graduated from Marvelwood, went to Providence College, and then ended up Syracuse. He's an Orangeman, got his master's in architecture. And he's a partner in one of the 25 largest architecture firms in the world. They have 17 offices worldwide. And the reason he has that is he built his own office down in Guayaquil, Ecuador. And by the way, he speaks, fluent Spanish and was told he would never learn a foreign language, right? So this guy, Stephen, he's incredible,
I'm freaking out.
right?
Right.
So
right.
he's assembled a team of about 10 people. These are engineers, estimators, specialists in areas like, green cleaning, that's, highly sanitary, HVAC, air handling, all these systems. They have worldwide experience in places like China, Southeast Asia. They help schools and hospitals with SARS. And, Stephen's been all over Central and South America helping people in vulnerable communities. So we hired them, this team. They've been working with us. They're actually on campus, and they're going to workshop numerous ideas for our facility. But it was funny. The reason I'm telling this story and I'm taking this selfish moment is not,
selfish moments is okay, Ben. It's all right.
It's all right. But it's the highlight, the way we started this conversation, Jake, this guy, Stephen, he's sitting here thinking, yeah, you know what? Yep. Nobody planned for this, but boy, can we plan around it? And, we know how to do this. And, and what makes me, so grateful is that we've got, as I said to the kids in the video we sent out this week, you've got one of your own, in the seat here, helping us figure out, what your learning spaces are going to look like next year, which is really awesome. So, but I think, obviously that's atypical. I mean, most schools aren't in that position, but we're in this position because of the amazing LDHD community that we're part of, Jake. That's the reason we're in this position. I think there's so much uncertainty, Jake, and you highlighted it. I mean, Boston, 2 days on, 1 day cleaning, switched to the different set of kids for the next 2 days. I think Maryland just announced alternating school weeks. There are numerous issues. I think the most important things for people, whether they're parents or educators, it seems like the most important things to be considering, what are the key things we have to get in front of these kids, and especially when we're thinking about younger kids in terms of, early literacy skills, math development, social emotional well-being. That's something that's critical, right? Social skills, all, looking at these different tranches of ages, K through 3, 4 and 5, 6, middle school, high school, what are the most critical things we need to get to these kids, and how do we support getting it to them? One of the huge challenges we saw this spring, and we continue to see in public schools, is that there are so few people in a public school building who are human resources to help kids with a learning or attention issue. That normally creates a huge bottleneck in the school year, but this has created an extraordinary exponential bottleneck because you've got just a few people in a school who need to help so many kids, and they don't have the bandwidth for it. So it's really thinking about, for parents and educators, what are the critical things I need to get in front of these kids this year? Are there things that my child or certain students in my class are going to need reliable, structured supports on, like accommodations or, different things to be independent learners at home? Because anybody with a learning or attention issue, for most, especially younger kids, this exacerbates it. Executive function regulation, much harder from a computer screen. If you're,
I don't even want to be on Zoom longer than I have to.
So I mean, Jake, I mean, think about text. I mean, how, when you were younger, how easy was it for you in first, second, third grade to be independent with text?
Right. But can I tell you something interesting? And I'm seeing this with the kids that I'm working with. And for those of you guys who don't know, I run a mentorship program for kids and young adults who learn differently around the world. And it's all done on Zoom. And, I'm working with kids as young as 7 years old. So what's interesting here is the relationships that were able to be established through technology, through Zoom, without physical connection. Within 4 weeks, there's a relationship being established and self-confidence is being improved. So I think it's what at least I'm experiencing here is a different approach on reaching kids and getting in their world, right? So, like, for example, obviously, like, we're not going to have our teachers playing Fortnite with the kids, but maybe there's a chance to bridge the gap between teacher, parents, and student.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to enter their worlds. The first thing I do is I'm saying, what are the things that you love? And how can we start a project surrounding what you love? Because at the end of the day, I learned how to read. We learned how to read. We're interested in things that we are naturally gravitated towards. Reading, I'm not going to want to read any book that I don't want to read. But if I'm fascinated with model trains, give me all the train books out there and I'm going to read it.
Yeah.
Shakespeare? No way. No way. So is that, what I'm saying here? So
Jake, you're absolutely right. And what's fast, you're hitting the nail right on the head. And I think, I was talking about, you need to have focus, critical factors, right? You need to have balance. You need to have academics. What are the core things? The other components that a lot of times actually we don't get in school around social emotional well-being, social engagement, those things. But the other third critical thing really are, who are the humans that are going to be in your child's life this coming year?
Absolutely.
Whether it's a mentor, a teacher, a parent, who are those humans that are going to be in this child's life? And how is the relationship built between those humans? Because exactly what you were just saying, so all these limitations that COVID created, the flip side is, I'm seeing some of this more happening more regularly is some form of communication. Like some of the special ed teachers, who were trying to do whatever they could to get the right things in front of these kids, they partnered, I think in many cases, far more with some of the parents to help deliver on that.
Right.
Or,
as they should, because their parents know the kids best.
Yep.
And at the same time, teachers know the kids in ways that parents may not. So there's right. So that's very interesting.
Yeah. And you know what, when you take, when you take all the other noise away in the classroom and it's just one singular kid, you're not measuring the volume in the room, by 24 voices. You're measuring the volume by one crystal clear voice who you're going to know and read in real time. Are they getting it? Are they not getting it? What are the better approaches or modalities for them? So the other huge opportunity that comes out of this, Jake, and this is really when I think about what's happening in the areas of research around our kids, we really want to get to a place where we're able to truly individualized learning, truly individualized learning at a brain level where we know what needs to be primed in the human brain at certain points to learn certain things, and how to, look, there, everything is average, right? We've talked a lot about this. And, we have these developmental milestones when kids, look for the kid who's talking by this age, walking by this age, right? We know those things, but then all of a sudden we enter school and it's great to have those developmental milestones, but then we enter learning, and learning is this very one-dimensional construct because everybody sits on the same plane, right? The same plane that only goes left and right. It doesn't, you go from first grade to second grade to third grade, right? You don't have any ability to really, in most learning systems, individualize. It's and from your experience at the Southport School, and this is true in a lot of the LD schools, we don't have grades. Why don't we have grades?
I can speak on that. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Talk about it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so when I was pulled out of school in sixth grade, in public school, I, what is a grade, right? What are we really measuring?
Yep.
And I think that this is one of the biggest faults in school because what are we measuring? Just IQ on its own, but there's something so much more than that. Like if a kid comes in early on, right, that is already more advanced in reading than their peers, then well, they're going to excel in reading much faster because they've already been exposed at an earlier age. So here we have the Southport School, and schools are starting to adopt this so much more. And this idea of, what if grades don't have to exist? You know, what if we could take the pressure away completely? And now kids could say, so what grade are you in? Well, I'm in none, actually. I'm just where I'm supposed to be.
Yep. Oh, yeah. Imagine that, right? Exactly.
Can you imagine such a world?
Yeah.
I am where I'm supposed to be versus where I'm being forced to be. And you know what? If I'm bad at math, but excelling in reading, if I'm reading on an 8th grade level, but I'm really in 6th grade, if I'm reading on an 8th grade level, but taking 5th grade math, where do you fit me? Am I just going to feel like a failure?
Right.
So what you've done, what the Southport School has done, and what I experienced at your school is, I mean, come on, like it took away that whole pressure of, you know, feel of social isolation, being held back, repeating a grade. I don't want to repeat it. I repeated a grade.
Yeah, right.
People repeat grades all the time. It's strategy. Hey, in college, it paid off because I was older and as a freshman, and you know what happens. It is the kind of thing where I didn't mind being held back a year. But what's the biggest, you know, deciding factor for kids? Well, maybe it's that fear of social isolation. And I think that's something that is so often misunderstood.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's, it really was, it changed my academic experience for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. No. And I think, you know, Jake, you know, the things that are happening now, you know, and especially with all these things with technology, a lot of them are just so directly translational, what a lot of people experience in the workplace anyway. And, you know, you think about like a modern workplace, you know, you need that EQ you talked about. You need the ability to be a good problem solver. You need to be able to, you know, either work in teams or know how to work with a team, or, you know, all those skills. And a lot of them, you know, a lot of them are, you know, skills that are social emotional skills. A lot of them are skills that are, you know, really founded in project-based learning. And, you know, and I think one of the beautiful things that we can do for kids is teach them the core foundational skills to open up access to knowledge, and then, you know, partner with them and provide opportunities for them to explore. And I have to tell you, I've got plenty of my own kids in the house, and, you know, like my daughter Reese, she wakes up, she's done with all her schoolwork by 10 in the morning. My other daughter, she's different. She does a chunk, she leaves it, she comes back. Like we all work differently. We're two.
So there's no right way to do it.
That's right. Right.
And there's no wrong way to do it, by the way.
Yeah. As long as you get it done, right? Yeah.
As long as you get it done. I think that's, you know, I think that's a really good point. And I mean, what you're doing, the Southport School, and for parents that may be like, well, that's great, guys, but I can't take my kid out of school.
Right.
You know, that's not an option for me. Sure, private school is great. Let me tell you what I learned from the Southport School. Okay. And I went to 2 LD schools, the Southport School and Foreman. But what I learned was something that we can all take away, which is the very fact that if kids are in a healthy environment, an environment that's embracing. Now, you could be in public school and not embraced at all, okay, by teachers. But what the Southport School taught me was how to embrace my strengths. If we can embrace our strengths, we can encourage our kids to look at their challenges and realize that those challenges don't define them. Maybe we're onto something.
Yeah.
And I would love if you can speak to those parents that where private school isn't an option.
Yeah.
You know, so what do they do? What are some tips that we can share that, you know, they can start implementing in their own home?
Yeah, no, so it's a great question, Jake, I think. And, you know, one of the initiatives we started at the Southport School a couple of years ago is called the Southport Collab. And the mission of the Southport Collab is to really take what we do and we know as a school and work collaboratively with partners, all over. We work with, several research partners. We work with other independent schools, just like us, around the country. So, but the whole goal and objective is to share what we know, because we know, Jake, like you said, for a variety of circumstances, whether it's geography, whether it's money, whether it's, resource, whatever it is, for most families, a school experience like ours is just not possible. And, especially when you look at children living in vulnerable communities. And part of our work in the collab is, partnering with, programs in places like Bridgeport, Connecticut. We offer almost all of the training we offer, Jake. Almost all of it is free to teachers in Title I schools. So, we're really trying to help support those communities.
Amazing.
But there are, there are a number of things that parents, resources that parents can turn to. Unfortunately, and this, there's just a lot of bad stuff out there. A lot of people are inclined to go to places like Pinterest and, download some really cool visual looking thing. And that's, I get it. You see something pretty and you look at it, you go, yep, you want to go for that. It looks great. But what's critically important for parents at home, critically important to understand, is that, anything that we put in front of kids should be grounded by research. So unfortunately, there's just a lot of stuff out there that looks great and seems like it could be great, but is just not grounded in research. And as part of the collab, if you go to the southportcollab.org, you can see we've got numerous resources from everybody from preschool. We've got lessons for preschoolers, variety of, we do a variety of free webinars. The other place I'm going to point you to is the Haskins Global Literacy Hub. So
Haskins, I'm writing that in the chat here.
It's
so
the Haskins Global Literacy Hub. And I'm pretty sure the website is haskinsglobal.org.
Okay.
And
if you guys have been there before, please comment below. This is a great opportunity to share what your experiences are with them, and if you guys have questions. Sorry to interrupt you, Ben.
Yeah, no. So we and the collab, the Southport Collab contributed. I think Jake, I'm an affiliated research scientist at Haskins.
Oh, I know that. Absolutely.
Which is one of the epicenters for research on spoken and written language and things like dyslexia. A lot of imaging work has been done there. And so anyway, Haskins pulled together, a lot of resources, and there's a huge resource page, haskinsglobal.org. You can go right to the resource page, and there's numerous for all different areas of literacy development. And two other places I'll point you to are the Meadows Center, and there are resources.
How do you spell that?
It's the Meadows Center, MEADOWS, the Meadows Center.
It's okay if the spelling is wrong, guys. It's all right. There's no distance on spelling. Okay.
But if you Google the Meadows Center, it's at UT Austin. It's University of Texas at Austin. It's Dr. Sharon Vaughn directs the Meadows Center. Just a ton of great resources at the Meadows Center. And another place, two more places. One would be the Florida Center of Reading Research, FCRR, Florida Center of Reading Research, which is at FSU. Tons of resources. They have some great social media profile, like on Facebook. They share a lot of their stuff for free. And then the Dyslexia Foundation. So if you go to YesRead, YesRead.org, there are a number of free videos and resources on there from really just world-class researchers from, who are specialist experts in dyslexia, ADHD. So there are great resources. And our work has really been to say, yeah, you know what, we know there are a ton of great resources, but how can we kind of bring them together and catalog them so parents don't have to reinvent the wheel? So yeah, those are great resources. And again, the Southport Collab, you can find a ton of stuff on there.
Right. Diana Bonney just
oh yeah
on here. Diana Bonney is a former alumni also of the Southport School. Welcome. Yep. So yeah, guys, if you have questions, please ask below. I'm reading these comments as we go. We have some great commenters. People are really excited about our talk and having you on, Ben. So thank you again for joining us tonight. That actually brings what you were just talking about here about literacy is I want to just touch upon this for a minute, because I think that the position parents have been put in since the whole quarantine, school being closed, is the parents actually had to play kind of a role of being the teacher. And,
Right.
Kids have been home for a while now. They're getting restless. And we're about to enter summer. Usually kids are finally done with school and they're finally getting a break and going to be at home. So parents have time to pace themselves, but kids have been really home since March, April. So what role can parents play to help prepare our kids for the fall, regardless of whether or not it's going to be on virtual or in person?
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm going to tell you the number one thing parents can do. Number one thing. You ready for it?
I'm ready for it. Hit me.
Are you ready? It's to let their kids be independent.
Nice.
Number one
Let's
thing.
talk about that. Yeah.
And, the reason I say that, Jake, so strongly is that whatever circumstance we're going to be in this year or next year or 5 years from now, these kids, one of the biggest challenges they face, and I'm not just talking about all the ADHD kids, I'm talking about all kids or the vast majority of kids in the United States right now. We have gotten to a place in this country where our kids really have significant deficits in these executive functions. The ability, and a lot of people think executive function means planning and organizing, and that's certainly an aspect of executive function, but emotional regulation. There are number of executive functions that are an ability to start something, the ability to carry through an assignment or carry through a project, right? Perseverance, task initiation.
Mhm.
These things are all critically important. And, as a culture, as a society, in a lot of the country, not all over, but in a lot of the country, we've scripted kids so much between school and activities. They've really formed pretty significant deficits. And, I think the best thing we can do for kids this summer, number one, is because there aren't a lot of structured activities and programs, it's finding opportunities, whether you have the resources in your own home or you have the time in your home, or finding people to work together within your community to put kids together in a way where they've got to go out and figure out what to do and how to build things and how to problem solve and work together and make plans and finish them. And these are all things that we can easily do with kids this summer in a variety of circumstances. And then I think the second thing is it's really important that, as is the case all year round, to find opportunities excuse me, to really highlight some of the core, making sure your kids are reading for 15 or 20 minutes a day, and it doesn't have to be
Could they be listening?
I was just about, Jake, I'm so glad you said that, right?
Great minds think alike.
Absolutely. It doesn't have to be punishing. A lot of people shy away from things like audiobooks. Yeah. And yes, part of reading and part of practicing reading is linking the sounds with the letters to actually literally, lift the print off the page. But that's just one piece of reading. Character development, plot, synopsis, all the different things that we learn about, from reading. Those things, we can find ways to engage kids, whether it's through audible books, through graphic novels, right? It doesn't have to be a punishment. So, finding ways to get your kids excited and engaged in reading on some level on a regular basis. And then, finding ways to practice things like math. And again, it's not sitting your kid down with a worksheet or like a book. It's, it's like baking in the kitchen and saying, oh, hey, can you help me bake this? And boy, we've got to do some, like, how are we going to break up this recipe? You'll get kids doing fractions and they have no idea. So, it's finding authentic opportunities to spend time with your kids, and hit some of those basics, or find somebody to do that with them, and giving them a lot of autonomy and independence to do the things that a lot of people used to do as kids that will really help promote long life executive function skill.
Absolutely. And I want to just touch upon that because audiobooks transformed how I got inspired to like reading again. For those of you that don't know, I was 3 grade levels behind in reading when I hit when I hit 6th grade, I was 3 grade levels behind. And how do you have the confidence to even want to pick up a book? Because let me tell you, there are parents watching this with kids who are so far turned off from reading that word triggers them. That word triggers me when I hear reading. Okay. So I think the big piece is it's not just any book, but it's going to be a book that gets them excited. So
Well,
how do we know a book that gets them excited? Well, think about the activities that your kids love that allow them to feel in control, whether it's basketball, a sport, a hobby, art, dance. If they like acting, find a script to a play.
Yep. Exactly, Jake. Exactly.
This is so cool.
Exactly right.
So
exactly
cool.
right.
Find a script to a play, dress up as the characters, make it a family night, and act it out.
Yep. So, yep, exactly
That
right.
is so much fun. And then what you could do is you can either watch the play on YouTube or you could just do it for fun. And that becomes, when I was younger, we had family plays all the time. That was awesome because it's multi-sensory. You're doing something, you're acting, you're making the noises. And sometimes kids don't like to just sit still. Okay. I have kids, I mean, I would listen to an audiobook. My dad would get in the car and we would just drive around and we'd put on a book. We would have nowhere to go, but we would just put on a book because I'm taking in information by sitting in the passenger seat, but I'm listening.
Yep.
And if your kids are struggling with reading, 100% read. And if the moms are watching this is actually something that I recently found out. But it was really impactful when I was younger, is a mother's voice or a father's voice that is soft and calm. Like, let's say during bedtime, okay, you have a mother and a father, one or the other, doesn't matter, but the voice of a parent that is not stressed, that's not getting frustrated, but that's gentle and soft.
Yep.
And that is reading them a story, and that can get in it with them. And sometimes, I mean, my dad would fall asleep when he would read me a story, but if you're watching this, Dad, I know I'm calling you out here, but like it's more than just reading a story. It's just spending time with your kids.
Yeah.
And I think that's just the most beautiful thing. And, yeah, I mean, that in terms of that piece, I think it's very, very important. So I guess with that being said, I mean, do you have anything that you'd like to just talk about that we forgot to mention? I know that we have just some people sharing about different books that they've read.
Yeah.
Our friend Patrick here said, I hated reading as a kid because it was so hard, but I remember finding a book on hockey that sparked something in me. I read the book cover to cover as I rollerbladed around one afternoon. I got some movement in a topic that interested me.
Well, I'm gonna share two kind of concluding thoughts here, Jake. Please. Number one, parents, listen to me. You ready, parents? This is really important. Do not let anybody fool you with a just right book. Just right book is nonsense. What happens in a lot of schools is they tell kids they can only read a just right book because it's within their Lexile score, like what they can actually decode. Let your kid read anything that you're comfortable with, and if they can't access it with their, through print, give them we were just talking about, give them the audiobook. I mean, we really limit kids with this whole concept of the just right book. It's just, it's holding kids back to the least common denominator, that, we like we were talking before about grades. So, open up the floodgates, let your kids pick out, and Jake, I was thinking about what you're just saying. Libraries have gone through these really challenging times in the last, 2 decades with the internet and all this stuff. And what do you see? The libraries are doing well. Why are they doing well? Because they created engaging spaces. And one of the first spaces they found ways to do that was with the kids, right? Kids spaces. And that's what people need. People want to be engaged.
Oh, yeah.
And so, there's an opportunity to do that. But I think most important, this is the concluding thought I wanted to share, Jake, and it goes back to a lot of things that circle through this conversation tonight. That the value and the human connection in all of this is so critical. You know, whether it's that voice or it's the person by your side or the person, you know, that you know on the other end of the Zoom call that you can connect with, you know, giving kids, as much as we want to give them that, you know, independence and ability to explore and develop these skills, you know, having those reliable voices, those champions that our kids need to be there for them, you know, that's going to be really critical this year. So, you know, make sure you know who are your kids' champions as we go into this next school year.
That's so amazing. And how can parents find you and learn more about the Southport School?
Sure. You know, if you want to get resources like we talked about tonight, you can go right to the southportcollab.org. The Southport School is southportschool.org, and there's a lot of information there. And you can also find me on the Haskins website. So if you go to haskinsglobal.org, you can find out more information about that. And or, you know, you can we do a number of free webinars and talks, you know, online, whether through the collab or when we get back in person, right at the Southport School. So
Right.
yeah, we're usually out there somewhere, Jake.
Yes, absolutely. And guys, thank you so much for joining us. Ben, you are just you're amazing, I have to say. And guys, you got to be following Ben Powers because he's doing just the most remarkable work with these kids, transforming and literally saving lives. The Southport School was part of saving my life on so many ways. So I am forever blessed and thankful for you and what your school has done. And guys, again, thank you so much for joining us. If you'd like to learn more about my mentorship program, you can find me at superpowerconsulting.com or just shoot me a Facebook message. Next person we're having on is a video game addiction expert.
Whoa, that sounds cool. I'm going to check that out, Jake.
Video game addiction expert.
Awesome.
So stay tuned. We're still getting on that date. So please, guys, I'm going to stay on for a little bit and answering some questions here. But Ben, thanks again for joining us.
Thanks, Jake.
Yeah. Take care, guys.
Jake, thanks for carrying the torch, man. You're doing an awesome job.
You got it. We're doing it together. All right. Bye.
Bye.